You know, the past couple of weeks we've been doing a lot of talking about Tim Tebow, but this week
Who?
we're actually going to talk about playoff teams. So guess who we're not talking about this week?
Actually, Tim Tebow's leading the division right now.
Well, and we're talking NFC playoffs. Let me make that more specific. We're talking NFC playoffs
And
this week.
we don't mention the TT anymore. Uh,
The TT.
we actually call him
Oh,
Jesus on the show.
okay, gotcha. Let's call it Jesus. Okay. Well, we're gonna go right into the scores for this week because we got a lot to talk about for
Oh,
playoffs.
definitely. So we can get to the playoffs. The Thursday night game, very uneventful.
Yeah,
Eagles,
I didn't watch
yeah, I didn't either.
it.
Eagles lose another one, 31-14 over Seattle, who is actually making a late charge.
I actually caught the end of the game. That was hilarious. I loved watching Seattle just pummel the Eagles, the dream team. I never get tired of that. Anytime a team brands themselves as eventual Super Bowl champions, the Jets, the Eagles, I love to see them just
Oh,
miserably
absolutely.
fail.
And they give us so much to talk about.
Exactly.
But instead of talking about that game, we'll get into some of the other scores real quick. Tennessee 23-17 over Buffalo. Buffalo continues to slide. Um, Kansas City actually pulls out the win over the Bears this week with a Hail Mary pass at the end. Uh, to me, Caleb Haney is not. It's not that he's that bad. To me, is there's no belief in him, and Chicago's actually considering options. They won't say it, but they're considering other options. They actually said no to what I thought was their best option. McNabb's still on the board, but I guess time will tell on that
Yeah.
one. Baltimore cruises over the Browns 24-10. Oakland and Miami in a just
Surprising game.
yeah, Miami on another charge. 34-14 Miami over Oakland. New England had to actually put Brady back in so they would win 31-24 over Indy, who
Mhm.
weren't that
Made
bad with Orlovsky.
a late surge.
Pittsburgh 35-7 over Bengals. Yeah, they didn't look like the Bengals, so I was surprised who it
No.
was. 38-19 Carolina over the Bucks. Tampa continues to slide as well.
Eh,
I
moving on.
I I smell a coaching change, but that's
Yeah,
wishful
I
thinking.
smell a lot of things, and none of them smell good.
Could be the side of the room you're on, but
Oh no,
uh,
Billy's over there. So
the Jets actually put it together, 34-19 over Washington. Uh, Atlanta loses in the in the
tough game.
yeah tough game. Just I caught the last play, so I didn't get to see a whole lot of it. But congratulations to Yates on the first win there, 17-10. His
First
future
start. I know
uh,
first win, but it wasn't first start.
may be his first, I believe it is.
Okay, we'll have to double check that for you.
But I mean, he's looking at maybe a Matt Castle like thing where next year, if he's not
Get a
number
deal.
two, maybe he could get a deal to
Definitely.
go to. Um,
Hey, it worked for Castle.
exactly. Maybe he goes to Jacksonville or somewhere else and turns them around. But moving on to the 4 o'clock games.
Minnesota beat Denver. Uh,
No, Denver won.
oh, did they? Oh, you have the visiting
Yeah,
team highlighted. Okay, so that's his fault.
yeah.
35 to 32 was the
Matt
final.
can't read.
Uh, whatever. It does say I apologize. I'm dyslexic. Uh, and San Francisco. What else is new? They just crushed St. Louis.
Just
Uh,
completely shut him out.
26 to nothing was the final in that one.
Actually, make the playoffs for good.
Uh, Green Bay pulled off another crazy win. This game actually went right down to the wire. It was awesome. Eli Manning led a final minute drive to put his team ahead with I think 46 seconds left, and
Yep.
everybody's thinking, oh, well, there goes the winning streak. And Aaron Rodgers wound up working so quickly that they actually had to run out the clock. With 46 seconds left, they started their drive and wound up running out the clock to kick a last second field
Yep.
goal. What was the final in that one? It was
38-35.
38-35, and then Arizona beats Dallas in overtime. We're going to talk about this game just a little bit because
Oh yeah.
some questionable calls there at the end of
From the fourth quarter on from Jason Garrett. I mean,
a lot of Dallas fans who we happen to have one on the show is not exactly happy with some of the decisions made at the end of that game, and the scoreboard says all you need to know. New Orleans and Detroit, and another game I had no interest in watching. New Orleans just rolled on Detroit. Wound up. I heard it was a pretty close game to
it,
start.
it was close for a while, but you can't give Drew Brees any chance.
Yeah.
And
Well, when I flipped it on in the fourth quarter, it was 31-17, and I flipped it right back off. So, no surprise in that one at all.
no,
And then last night, in another really boring game, San Diego just rolls on Jacksonville, which was actually started out being a close game. But San Diego finally gets it together with all the talk about North Turner being out and all the changes that are supposed to be coming there. they did a good job of pulling their stuff together and getting a win.
Yeah, definitely.
But we are actually going to talk about. We're going to move straight into the playoff picture because we got a lot to talk about. A lot of people are confused, interested, whatever you want to call it, about playoffs in the NFC. Next week we'll do AFC. This week we're going to do NFC. But so we're going to start with the number one seed right now, the obvious Green Bay Packers. We're going to talk about their remaining schedule and then our prediction for how their season ends up.
Well, I mean, looking at the remaining schedule, they're probably going to be the number one seed regardless. But
Yeah.
but at absolute worst, they're going to be number two seed, which means they get to take a week off.
And I don't even think that'll happen. I think the rest of their schedule versus Oakland, at Kansas City, versus Chicago, and versus Detroit. I just don't know. Maybe Detroit, maybe Chicago, but they're both at
I
Lambeau.
mean, Chicago's got to fix their quarterback
You
situation
got to
and
think
maybe
they're
put another
favored.
back there.
You got to think they're favored certainly to just coast right in the playoffs from here. You may see one of those two teams even beat them because they pull Aaron Rodgers and the
Right.
starters, take the Colts way from a couple years ago, and it's no point in getting Aaron Rodgers hurt trying to have an undefeated season. And
Definitely not. Let the MVP have a week
yeah,
off.
I mean, saying back-to-back champions I think is better than saying undefeated.
Yeah,
So priorities.
definitely.
Number two seed right now is San Francisco at 10-2. Pretty outstanding still. We talked a lot about Arizona on the
I mean,
show.
they're in the crap division, and the rest of their schedule's pretty coast worthy, except for a big game in a couple weeks. But I mean, for the most part, San Francisco's probably looking at the two seed.
Their remaining schedule is at Arizona. You got to think that's a win versus Pittsburgh. That's certainly going to be a highly
It's going to be a good one.
popular match. At Seattle and at St. Louis, you got to think both of those are easy wins.
And
Uh,
actually, that's the Monday night game, San Francisco Pittsburgh.
so yeah, even more hype. First good Monday night game in a
That's what I
while,
was
actually.
thinking. We were just having that discussion that Sunday night has been way better this
Yeah,
year.
Monday night football needs to pick it up. Uh, Note to ESPN, who surely watches these videos.
Thanks for following us on Twitter, by the way.
uh, we're moving on to the number three seed right now, the leader of the NFC South, those darn New Orleans Saints that no one likes. 9-3 record.
I like a lot of what they do. I
They
just don't
they're
pull for
picking
them.
it up. That's
Yeah,
that's for sure. They've started after since their loss to the St. Louis Rams.
right.
They've gotten angry, and it's showing. Their remaining schedule at Tennessee could be somewhat difficult, but other than that, at Minnesota is got to think is almost an easy guaranteed win. Versus Atlanta, I
It's
mean,
gonna be
the
tough.
only team
Division is always
the
tough.
only team that I really think can give them anything right now, and then versus Carolina, hopefully they'll just roll Cam Newton.
Well, maybe, maybe they do, maybe they don't. We all know how you feel about Cam, but with Carolina, they actually, of all four of the remaining teams there, they actually match up better against New Orleans. They could give them a run,
We shall see.
and with Breeze possibly pulled for the last
You
game.
got to think that's also a possibility, especially if they beat Atlanta and wrap up the division. Uh, Moving on to the number four seed, the Dallas Cowboys, with a 7-5 record. Nothing really to brag about, but they are leading their division.
A couple lucky wins and a couple times. I mean, honestly, they should have a couple more wins on the board, but they should also have a couple more
But
losses.
you
So
know what? Wins are wins,
exactly.
and they have enough to be leading their division right now at 7-5. So more power to them. Their remaining games actually are a little bit tougher than anyone else's. I think Dallas actually has one of the toughest schedules remaining.
Absolutely.
A game against New York Giants. I'm sorry. Division game,
Hmm.
always hard to predict. At Tampa Bay, I give them that one. I think that's an easy win. Uh, but other than that, Philadelphia, another division game.
They have interesting matchups is the thing with
They do.
Philadelphia.
It's a really hated rivalry, and as bad as either team is, it's always a good game.
Yep.
I mean, just always. And then at Giants.
Yeah.
So Giants, three of the last four games against division opponents,
Yep.
and two at that team's field. It's kind of crazy. It's
I
gonna be hard.
I mean, you got one on the outside looking in, and you got one division leader. So I
That
mean, they could
division.
actually play spoiler for each other.
Watch this division carefully, guys. Don't throw a crown on Dallas's head yet. This is gonna go down to the wire. Uh, that wraps up the division leaders right now for the wild card, the first wild card spot. And wild card gets kind of crazy. We're not going to go into explaining all of it right now. You're more than welcome to come talk to us personally, and we'll
We're
be
just
glad to.
taking the ones who have the best shot of
Yeah,
maybe taking one of the two
I mean,
spots.
technically Tampa Bay isn't eliminated, and we aren't going to discuss Tampa Bay because I mean, there's just no point. So wild card spot number one, Chicago Bears, 7-5 record. We already talked about them in their division
Hmm.
uh, with Detroit.
Right.
Uh, so their remaining games at Denver. Uh, that's the only time we'll talk about Denver. Versus Seattle, at Green Bay, and at Minnesota.
I
You know,
mean,
I don't see any real problem for them other than Green Bay. Maybe Denver, but
I don't know. I look at that and say that, Denver is an away game. They're
yeah,
at Green Bay. That's another away game. And at Minnesota. The Metrodome can be kind of
it
crazy to
can
play
be.
in sometimes.
And Christian Ponder's starting to play better. You got to give it
Exactly.
to
I
him.
mean, he had 381 yards this year. I mean, this week, which is a rookie record for at least Minnesota.
Well, I'm just of all the tough records, you got to think that theirs
Yeah,
is relatively easier than most. But
definitely.
certainly
But
with
they still have to fix their offense problems right
exactly,
now.
and certainly with Green Bay in the mix. I mean, anybody you just don't want to see those two
No,
letters GB on your schedule right
no.
now. They are just rolling. Uh, the NFC second wild card spot, the Atlanta Falcons, a very popular team on this show, also with a 7-5 record.
Mhm.
Their remaining games are at Carolina versus Jacksonville, at New Orleans, and versus Tampa Bay.
Three division games, and I have to bring up the fact that Atlanta is really making all four of us look pretty goofy right now because I'm pretty sure that at least three of the four, if not all of us, predicted Atlanta out of the playoffs
Yeah,
this year,
I didn't
and
give
they're hanging
Atlanta a
in there.
shot. Uh, well, I gave Atlanta a shot, but I certainly picked over them.
Definitely.
Uh, at Carolina, you got to think that's a winnable game. Should win. They handled
It's a
Carolina.
winnable.
It's at Carolina. It
Yeah,
is a division game, but they handled Carolina last time they played. You got to expect them to be able to do that again, especially coming off a poor
definitely.
performance.
Jacksonville is, I mean, almost a lost cause at this point.
Yeah, I mean,
I
you
mean,
got to give them
AJ,
to
you
that.
might as well buy your LA gear now.
New Orleans could come down to for the division, very easily come down to for the division. That could be a huge game.
Definitely. And then the
And
spoiler game at the end.
versus Tampa Bay,
Yep.
they could turn right back around and lose that division.
Yep.
If I was a Falcons fan, though, I would not be worried about Tampa Bay as a
No.
Tampa Bay fan. I think you can just look over that one.
No, they're probably Falcons are probably going to go 3-1. You're going to probably need 10 wins to make the playoffs.
Yeah,
They're probably a wild card.
I think they've got it. Uh, so now that's all the wild card spots. If the season ended right now, we would have Green
Yep.
Bay, San Francisco, New Orleans, Dallas, Chicago, and Atlanta in the playoffs. In the hunt, we've got two teams that we're going to talk about that have very legitimate shot also at making this. The Detroit Lions, who we started the year undefeated. I mean, we were rolling on Detroit. They've kind of dropped off
Just I mean
significantly.
it's discipline problems and it's not even Indomitian Sue for the most part because he didn't play this week and they had I believe it was 8 penalties for 108 total yards against the Saints. You can't give the Saints that kind of yards and three or four of those penalties were personal fouls after the play.
And it's just not excusable.
No,
And
you
for any team, any reasons at all.
I actually look for a coaching change there, regardless of what they do, because he can't control his players.
Really, Jim Schwartz out? Oh,
I'm predicting it.
you heard it here. If Jim Schwartz out, we're gonna crown this guy king of predictions because there's a lot of coaches on the hot seat, and Jim Schwartz's name is not at the top of the list.
I'm gonna start looking for a crown.
All right, well, we'll do that. That's in a later show. And the last team we're going to talk about is the New York Giants at 6-6, a pathetic record, should not be in the playoffs, but
I
it
mean,
is what it is.
I mean,
They're in the hunt.
them and Dallas do have a similar schedule because they play each other, but they really hold their destiny in their hands.
The
If
remaining games are at Dallas versus Washington, at New York Jets, and versus Dallas. So Dallas twice
mhm.
in 4 games.
And then you got the Jets, who are the best spoilers in the league
Yeah,
most of the time.
yeah. And I mean, it's just at this time, it's like kind of like which New York Giants team is going to show up. Is this the team
Exactly,
that crushed the Patriots, that just destroyed them, or is this the team that just looked lost on Sunday
exactly.
and you know they played great against Green Bay, gave them all they could handle, but I mean the superior team won, and New York knows that,
Yep.
and so it's just a matter of what can they pull together, and they could certainly salvage this at 6-6 right now. They're certainly looking at a 10-6 season and getting in fine, but at 6-6 right now, you just don't know. I wouldn't put my money on them if I were.
I mean, well, but if you look at the four teams, whether they're in or whether the two looking in, though, I mean, If you had to pick two to say these are going to be the wild cards,
Well,
which two would you pick right now?
if I had to pick two right now to pick the wild cards, I would pick the two that are in the wild card spot. And I know that's the kind of
Yeah,
easy way, but Chicago, with their remaining schedule, they've got Green Bay, who they could very well lose to, but you got to think Denver and Seattle and Minnesota they can take care of and get into the playoffs. And certainly with Atlanta, Carolina, Jacksonville, and Tampa Bay, three given wins. I give it to them right
yeah.
now. I feel comfortable saying they'll win those three games easily. The one game against New Orleans. So both teams have one game against Green Bay and against New Orleans that'll be real tough challenges and could very well be spoilers. But I definitely think that Atlanta and Chicago will go as the number one and number
See,
two
as
wild
much as
card
I hate
teams.
to be wrong on my earlier prediction, um, I do have the Falcons as one of the wild cards. They will probably actually be the fifth seed the way I'm looking at it. But Chicago, if they don't do anything about the quarterback situation,
They
is
they do.
probably gone. Sorry, Caleb Haney. I guess in a couple weeks you can join us on the show instead of being in the playoffs.
And
It's
that's one thing we may have failed to account right here is that
and
they
it
are at a loss
because
for
without an offense, their defense is holding them fine, but they're going to lose
they
games
are gonna.
10-3 like they did this time.
Mm-hmm.
And then Detroit also with their problems, I think they're going south too. So almost by default, we're looking at Atlanta and the Giants here. And
Giants.
the Giants are the outside team.
Yeah.
But if they go 2-2 and both other teams lose all their games, they're in. Unless somebody way up under them goes on a run, because there are quite a few teams with 5 or 4 wins, but I really doubt somebody's going to run the gauntlet.
All right. Well, that is that's our prediction. That's the way we see it right now. We'll do AFC next week. So if you like the Patriots, they should, or the Ravens, you should definitely tune in. Uh,
Yeah, definitely. And before we get out of here, I can't let you. You wanted to make sure we mention this. A happy holidays to one of Matt's favorite baseball players, Scott Linebrick. He misses you. Wishes you guys could hang out more often. And I knew you wanted to mention that. Didn't want to let you forget it. But this is Jeremy and Matt for the recap show. We'll see you next week.